She was sinking in the freezing mud, too weak to move, her tiny chest rising slower with each breath. People passed by, but no one stopped. Just when her eyes began to close, a stranger knelt in the dirt, whispering, "Hold on, little one. I've got you." What happened next will stay in your heart forever. If you're an animal lover, hit subscribe for more stories like this. It's completely free, and it inspires us to keep telling the ones that truly matter. The rain had been falling for hours, turning the narrow dirt road into a ribbon of brown water. Most people in the village stayed inside, shutters closed, pretending they couldn't hear the storm's howling. But as I drove home from a late supply run, my headlights cut through the curtain of rain and caught something. At first, it looked like a discarded rag, half buried in the thick, sucking mud by the roadside ditch. But rags don't shiver, and rags don't look up at you with eyes that are too tired to beg. I pulled over, my boots sinking into the soft earth as the storm drenched me in seconds. The rag was a puppy, a German Shepherd mix, maybe 2 or 3 months old, her fur so plastered with mud and rainwater that you could barely see the pattern. Every rib jutted out beneath her trembling skin, and her breathing came in short, panicked bursts. One paw was bent at an unnatural angle, pressed into the muck. She didn't growl. She didn't bark. She just lay there, eyes half-lidded, watching me as though deciding whether I was real or just another shadow in the rain. When I knelt beside her, the smell of wet earth mixed with something sharper, blood. Her left hind leg was coated in a sticky, dark stain, half washed away by the rain. I reached out slowly, speaking in a low, steady tone, the way I would to a frightened child. Hey, it's okay. I've got you." For a moment, she flinched, her body so tense that I could feel every bone. But then something changed. Maybe it was the way my hand didn't force her. Maybe it was just the last flicker of hope she had left. Either way, her head dropped into the mud with a quiet sigh, and her eyes closed. I scooped her up. She was frighteningly light, like holding a bundle of sticks wrapped in wet cloth. The rain kept falling in hard sheets as I carried her to the truck, my jacket shielding her from the wind. Every step back to the road felt like walking through glue. Inside the cab, I cranked the heat and wrapped her in an old wool blanket from the back seat. She didn't resist. She didn't even lift her head, just leaned into the warmth like she was trying to disappear inside it. Her breathing was shallow, her ears twitching only when the thunder cracked above us. As I drove toward the vet clinic in the next town, I kept glancing at her in the passenger seat. The blanket rose and fell slowly. Too slowly. Her fur, once black and tan, was dulled to shades of gray by the mud. Her paws were raw, the pads cracked and bleeding from walking or crawling, too far without shelter. And yet, even in that broken state, she had the kind of quiet dignity only animals possess, the kind that makes you wonder what she'd been through and how she'd survived this long. The storm didn't let up. Water pooled on the road, tires slicing through it as we pushed on. I kept one hand on the wheel and the other resting gently over the blanket, feeling the faint rhythm of her breath beneath my palm. "Stay with me, girl," I murmured, not sure if I was talking to her or to myself. By the time we reached the small vet clinic, the rain had thinned to a drizzle, but the damage was done. My clothes were soaked, my boots heavy with mud, and the puppy in my arms felt more like a fragile memory than a living creature. The clinic door chimed as I shouldered it open. A middle-aged man in scrubs, Dr. Evans, looked up from the counter, his brow furrowing instantly. "What happened?" "Found her on the road," I said, my voice rough from the cold. "She's hurt." "Bad." He didn't waste time. He motioned for me to follow, and together we placed her gently onto the metal exam table. The bright overhead light revealed more than I was ready for. Deep cuts along her flank, a swollen ankle, ticks buried in her skin. Dr. Evans's hands moved quickly but gently, checking her pulse, her temperature, her injuries. "She's hypothermic," he said quietly, "and dehydrated. Broken leg. She's lucky you found her when you did." Lucky. I looked at her, at the tiny rise and fall of her chest, and thought about how close I'd been to driving past, convincing myself it was just a pile of trash. How many other people had already done the same? When Dr. Evans stepped away to get supplies, I stayed by her side, resting my fingers lightly on her head. Her eyes flickered open for a moment, and in that instant, I saw it. Not fear, not anger, something quieter, something heavier. It was resignation. The kind that says, I've been left behind before. I don't expect you to stay. And in that moment, I made a promise I didn't say out loud. I was going to stay. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face again, that same face from the ditch. The rain had stopped hours ago, but in my mind, I still heard it pounding on the tin roof of the shelter. I still saw those mud-caked eyes looking up at me, silently asking if this time, someone would stay. When I got to the shelter the next morning, I went straight to her crate. She was curled in the back, head resting on her front paws, breathing slow and shallow. Her blanket was still damp from where her wet fur had pressed against it all night. The other dogs barked and jumped at the sound of the door opening, but not her. She just lifted her head and looked at me. It wasn't the look of fear I had seen yesterday. It wasn't relief either. It was something heavier, something I can't describe without my chest tightening even now. It was the look of a creature who has decided not to hope anymore. I dropped to my knees beside her crate. "Hey, little one," I whispered. Her eyes followed my hand as I slowly reached toward her. She didn't move away. She didn't move closer. She just watched, like she was bracing for disappointment. I wrapped her in a fresh towel and carried her to the small recovery room. She felt even lighter than yesterday, as if there was nothing left of her but fur and bone. Her paw dangled limply over my arm, still wrapped in the tiny bandage from the night before. When I set her down on the padded table, she didn't try to get up. She just laid her head down again, her breathing deep and uneven. The vet came in a few minutes later. "She's severely malnourished," he said softly, after checking her vitals. "Her temperature is still low, but she made it through the night." "That's something. Something." I nodded, but my eyes never left her. It was like every slow blink, every tiny shiver, was a decision she was making, whether to stay in this world or let go. I knew then that she wasn't just fighting her injuries. She was fighting the belief that life could be kind again. Over the next few days, I made her my quiet mission. Every break I got, I'd sit beside her, speaking softly, offering her tiny bits of food. Sometimes she would eat a little. Sometimes she would just stare at it, then back at me. It wasn't until the fourth day that I saw the smallest change. I had brought her a piece of boiled chicken, warm and soft. She sniffed it, and for the first time, took it gently from my fingers. Her teeth never touched me, just the warmth of her mouth, the faintest pressure. I almost cried. Day by day, she began to sit up on her own. Her eyes stayed on me longer when I entered the room. Once, I caught her watching the other dogs play through the gate, her ears twitching ever so slightly. And then came the moment that broke me completely. It was a quiet afternoon. The shelter was calm, most of the dogs sleeping. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor beside her blanket, my hand resting near her paw. She shifted, slowly, until her head rested in my palm. I froze. Her eyes met mine, and it wasn't the empty, hollow stare from the ditch anymore. It was something softer, almost like a question. Like she was asking if it was safe to believe in someone again. I couldn't hold it in. "I'm here," I whispered, my throat tight. "I'm not leaving you." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just her rescue. She was rescuing me too. Because sometimes, the smallest, weakest creature can remind you of the weight of promises and the power of simply staying.